Live from KENS-TV, this is Great Day SA with your host, Bridget Smith, featuring Eileen Tevis, Paul Morellis with weather, and Natalie Tejeda.
Well, would you know the signs of an addict? What is an addiction and why can't they seem to stop? Here to help us understand and overcome are Rob Park and Dr. Alex Kudish, both from the Origins Recovery Centers. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Good morning.
This is a very, very important subject because it affects everyone and it affects anyone. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. So what is an addiction, doctor?
Well, an addiction is an illness that has genetic and chemical changes in the brain in addition to environmental influences, and has different phases including abuse, use, and dependency of different chemicals. And the hallmarks tend to depend on having withdrawal syndromes or symptoms, tolerance, needing more substances in order to produce the same effect, and the dependence on the substance that you just cannot stop using.
Okay, you mentioned two things that really jump out to me: genetics, chemical. So how do those two, I take it, combine, make the combination of an addiction?
It does. It seems like in the studies that are now being looked at that there's quite a history in family members of addictions, and particularly in the patients that we see. We look historically at family members, and there's compared to non-addicted people, they have a huge history of family members that have chemical dependency issues. And then the environment is important. If you're around people who are addicts, then that may influence your behavior as you grow and developmentally, and incorporates into part of who you are.
Okay. And so, Rob, I know you also talked to a few patients as well. Is that right?
Yeah. And just to add to that, I mean, particularly with when I'm talking to families when they're first calling on the phone and they're calling with their loved one who desperately needs some help, you can almost always trace back that there is an addiction somewhere in the family. Although, having said that, sometimes there's not, and it's really hard to find it. Regardless, there's some behaviors and some telltale signs that really present that this person has a problem with an addiction. And
so list for us some of the various addictions, because it just seems like, you know, we hear them, but are they truly addictions?
Well, you have alcohol addictions and chemical addictions such as heroin, opiates, methamphetamine, stimulants, benzodiazepines such as Xanax, Ativan,
sometimes medication
sedative,
as well.
Medications, pain medications, marijuana, cannabis. Now the addictions to the synthetic cannabinoids are important. In addition, you have what's called process addictions, other addictions that not necessarily are chemicals, such as gambling, sex addictions, those internet addictions.
I hear internet addiction a lot now, these days. Yes.
And so these are all addictive behaviors, and there seems to be obsessive behaviors that are reoccurring that all kind of contribute to the process.
And of course, Doctor, and also Rob, you know, we hear about celebrities who openly will talk about their addictions. Whitney Houston, we have heard recently some of the toxicology reports that she was addicted to cocaine. Also, Robert Downey Jr., an actor who has admittedly said that he's been addicted to drugs. And you mentioned sex addiction. Actor David Duchovny has talked about it openly as well. So when do you find out that a habit has turned into an addiction?
I think in simple terms, it's when you're doing something that you cannot stop, and even though you might want to. When you're going against your own best judgment. It's, so for instance, an addict may say, gosh, I'm doing this and I don't even want to. When it gets to that point, it really turns into an addiction to where professional help is needed.
I'm doing this and I don't even want to. When you start asking yourself and telling yourself this, then that's when you should realize that this might be an addiction? Is that what you're saying?
Sure, and I mean sometimes it's, you know, addiction, it manifests through a lot of dishonesty with the self. So sometimes when the addict is in the grips of their addiction, they're not able to truly see that maybe this is not the healthiest lifestyle they could lead. So they need family members and things like that to be educated about what to look for so they can bring that to their attention.
Okay, so you say what to look out for, and also, you know, there are other things too. Why do they keep relapsing? What's going on in the brain? What's going on around them that's making them wanting to go back to this addiction? So we're going to talk about that as well. So after the break, tune in because we're going to be talking about the top reasons why addicts relapse. We'll be right back. And welcome back, everybody. Before the break, we were just defining the word addiction, and Rob Park, the Executive Director for Origins Recovery Centers, plus Dr. Alex Kudish, who is the Chief Medical Officer also with Origins. They're both here to talk about it. So we were just defining addiction. It really, there's environmental, there's genetic, there's chemical, you name it, reasons some addicts will go into an addiction. But top 10 reasons why addicts relapse. Let's go over those because I know you've got a lot to cover here. You say that loved ones who don't get involved, who are not educated, may be another reason too. Is that right? Yeah,
particularly post-discharge, loved ones who continue to enable the addict and rescue them and not allow them to take responsibility for their lives is truly can rob them of their recovery.
You also say that individuals are left to fend for themselves after recovery.
Right. What happens is that patients come into treatment and then they'll be there a certain amount of time and then they'll walk out the door not really knowing sometimes what to do. And our treatment center really focuses on the long-term recovery process, including a comprehensive treatment in residential for about a 3-month stay, and then a MAPS program where they have accountability and they have testing with substance abuse testing, counseling services, and contact with the treatment center on a very frequent basis that allows the recovery process to continue for about a 2-year period.
Okay, some of the other reasons too, you say recovering addicts are given controlled substances, prone to abuse. Also, there's a pathological reasoning too behind some of these addictions.
Right, and with recovery addicts being given controlled substances, for example, you know, it's unusual to understand why someone would require the degree of medication such as opiates for very simple reasons. Sometimes addicts will go to a particular physician knowing that they can get these controlled substances and get back on drugs that they really can't survive well with. And so we have to educate our community and our physicians to be able to be very judicious in how they take care of our patients and make sure that they don't really focus better on controlling that abuse potential.
I want to skip, Doctor, to a few other reasons, and that is number 4, and that is co-ed treatment fosters inappropriate behavior. What do you mean by that?
Well, oftentimes you take away an addiction, you take away what the addicts have been relying on for their well-being, and they're left a little bit raw. And if you put a member of the opposite sex, there's a lot of attraction that can occur. A lot of times a lot of other process addictions can come up, like with David Duchovny, the sex addiction and things like that. So keeping them separated really allows us to focus on feminine issues and masculine issues and have them bond together to where they can truly focus on their internal process.
Okay, how about this? And that's the number 1 reason. 30 days is not enough. 30 days for recovery is not enough. You say that.
Treatment has evolved. I mean, historically it was a 28-day model. There's even movies after that. But it's evolved to, this is a chronic condition and we need to treat it as such. So the most significant brain healing happens in that first 90 days. And so to be able to keep someone for those 90 days is truly remarkable, and truly our outcomes are tremendously higher than the 30-day model.
Okay, so good advice here. But let's go ahead and go to Paul, who's standing by in our cyber cafe, who's got, I believe, some Facebook questions. Right, Paul?
Yeah, that's right. We've got one viewer. This viewer asked the question, what do you do when the addict doesn't admit that they've got a problem?
Okay, so did you guys hear that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's several things to do. One of the most popular versions is an intervention.
Yes.
You can contact our center. We can hook you up with several professional interventionists, and truly bringing the truth to this person before their eyes, involving families and loved ones and all of that, and getting that person the help that they need.
Okay, I know a lot of people have some questions. There's the information right there, so be sure to write that down. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Stay with us, everybody. We're going to be right back.